One School District Board of Education meeting. I appreciate everyone that's here this evening. We're about ready to wrap up. Did we wrap up first quarter? I think we got parent-teacher conferences coming up. I mean, it just clicks off quickly. So, tradition of the board is to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The mission of the Cameron R1 School District is to offer an exceptional educational experience, and the mission of the district is to educate and empower our students to reach their full potential. This evening, sorry, I think I have a hair, extra hair. This evening we have someone, Miss Courtney Lee, that I'd like to recognize. Is she with us this evening? She is. If you want to come up and I'll present a certificate, Miss Lee. I'll read this to the crowd. For continuing for contributing to a vision of excellence in the Cameron R1 School District by obtaining your master's degree in administration from Grand Canyon University. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know about you guys, but I always enjoy celebrating all of our staff that just goes above and beyond, and it takes a lot of extra work to get those things done. So we really appreciate that. To the board, you've been presented the agenda for the evening. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Lockridge, second by Ms. Goodwin-Clark. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Thanks. Next we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Early.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grenier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, consent agenda passes unanimously. Moving on to non-action reports. So we'll start with the summer project update.
Yeah, I just want to update everybody on our summer projects, where we're at on those. Obviously, we had a lot of different projects going on this summer. Pretty much the high school gym was completely redone, and that's all completed at this point in time. In fact, we've got to play a couple home volleyball games in there already, and so I think it's worked out well. We've had a lot of very, very nice comments on it, whether it be the bleachers or the paint or the new floor, whatever it was. We obviously finished we're about 98% done on the tennis courts. We played on them obviously, but we had a small section of concrete we had to we'll have to come back and that we'll have to do that because of the poles for the tennis courts. We couldn't do that concrete around there until those were already in. So once we get that about 2-foot section, it's about 100 foot long, we'll be done with the tennis courts, and then we'll put a little black dirt on top of there and get grass planted and things for the spring. And then we just finished a fencing project at the high school football field. We redid the south side and the west side. It's not the most glamorous, it's just a fence, but it does look better than the fence that was falling down. So we had those. The other project, obviously, we did the parking lot on the south addition. We've been using that all year. And then the other piece that we had was the redoing the locker rooms. And we're still in the process of those. Pretty much everything's framed in, but we're waiting on the shower stalls. Once we get those, we can kind of do the rest of the walling, get the floors, and we'll be ready to go. So I still think we're going to be pretty close to the time basketball season and wrestling season. Pretty much our winter sports get started, but our winter activities. But right now we're just waiting on shower stalls, which are supposed to be delivered tomorrow. So that's where we're at on some of the projects. So I think we're in a good position. And like I said, I've finished up most of the projects, just waiting on the locker room project. So
We had talked about the parking in front of the football field. Is that still on the table?
it is still on the table. That is something that they were working with engineering, or architect company was working with engineering on. That's probably going to have to be something we're going to have to do next summer. just with asphalt season, we're almost out of it. And then by the time we get into it next year, it'll probably be May or June before we actually able to do that project. And so we'll look at it and see if it's going to be, into this year project or if we'll make it a summer project. But that is our goal to have that.
Where was that again?
The handicap parking would be along
Right.
up at the, pretty much the football field entrance. We would kind of change that a little bit. We were looking at anywhere up for about 15 handicap parking spots that would go all the way across there that would actually be on a hardtop surface, so, yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Robinson? Thanks for all the work.
Yeah.
I'm hearing lots of compliments. I've been
Yeah.
able to attend a couple events in the high school gym, and
Actually, we start hosting volleyball districts next week, so we'll get to bring quite a few different schools in and get to show off the facilities to everybody else, so, yeah.
next we'll move on to LJ Hart's report for us.
Yeah, we've got a couple representatives here from LJ Hart, Wesley Townsend, and Brad Wegman. And I'll let you guys kind of present. I know you guys gave some information to the board, so.
Very nice to see you all again. We have good news to report. We originally split the district's 2020 bond issue into two pieces. Back in 2020 with the pandemic, the Fed cut rates to zero to support the economy, so it was an incredibly favorable environment to issue the $10 million of bonds. But since the rates were zero at that time, and the rates were at the lowest they've been in over 60 years, the district couldn't really earn anything on reinvestment of those bond proceeds. So we worked with Dr. Robinson to split the issue into two pieces as you needed the funds for the construction projects. So we issued $6 million in 2020 with a 5-year call feature of March 1st, 2025. And then we issued in 21 the remaining $4 million, and we kept that same call feature 4 years on the 21 piece, so they would all be callable March 1, 2025. Now that we're getting towards the end of 2024, based on tax law, the district has to wait till within 90 days of the March 1st, 2025 call date to be able to get tax exempt interest rates. So we can't close the refunding until after December 1st of this calendar year. So now that we're getting close to that, most investors don't want to commit until closer to a month out of that first week of December. So we have a resolution for approval this evening to proceed with the refunding, and we plan to take it to market in about 2 weeks once we're closer to about a month out from that December 1st window. We've got booklets to briefly highlight information on this refunding, and then also we've got projections for the next round of new money bond issues. Inside the booklet, we've got the picture of our staff with our 4 retired superintendents, then the map of the state of Missouri with all the schools that we work with highlighted in yellow. But then on page Roman numeral 5, we have our, Roman numeral 4, we have our financing history with the district going all the way back over 20 years. You all have been able to save over $3.5 million from various refundings. Then we add in the various prepayments, and your total interest savings to the taxpayers has been $4.2 million. And so with this potential refunding this evening, we're hoping to add to that $4.2 million. Under page 1 of the actual booklet, Exhibit A, just for some perspective, we have the district's assessed value growth calculations. So over the past 5 years, your average annual growth in assessed valuation has been 6.46%. In all of these projections, we're trying to be very conservative, so we're assuming annual growth of just 2%, well below 6.46. Then we've got, since periodic reassessment in the 90s, 7.8%, and then going all the way back to the 80s, 7.4%. So we're very conservative. Then on page 2, we have the historical adjusted levies by fund, going all the way back to 1993-94. So the district's been relatively constant at the current levy through the years. So that's been right around $4.34 total levy for quite a while now. Then on pages 3 and 4, we have the existing payments on the 2020A, the first $6 million piece that we're looking to refund this evening. It had a 5% coupon with yields that dropped that down to effectively about 1.1%. That produced $1,046,938 of premium for the projects. So factoring that premium is what drove the yield to effectively 1.1 to the 5-year call feature of March 1st, 2025. So once we go past the call date, you'd be paying the 5% rate unnecessarily. When you factor in the premium and assuming we refinance, it would have been effectively 1.1%. On page 4, Schedule 2, we have the remaining payments on the second piece, the $4 million piece that was issued in 2021 with the 4-year call feature. That produced $621,000 of upfront premium. That yielded less than 1%, about 0.71%. Similar structure to the first $6 million piece. And then we also are prepaying $700,000 of that issue. So we'll be refunding the net $3 million amount plus the $6 million. We also had $300,000 already mature on that financing as well. So we'll be refunding in total $9 million. Then on page 5, we have the statement of cash flows. Illustrates in light green all the revenue brought in by the district's 99-cent debt service fund. To the left of the revenues from that debt service fund in green is the assessed valuation, growing at that rate of just 2%. So if you all continue to grow at closer to 6.5%, all those revenues will be much higher than what we're showing. Then to the right of the green, we have the payments on the 3 outstanding bond issues, which factors in the 2 prepayments that are already approved by the board. And then the 2 columns we really like to focus in is the right-hand side of the page, purple column, balance in the debt service account, and then in dark blue, all the payments totaled, and we've blown those 2 up on the next page. So in the purple column, after you all make your payments on all the outstanding bond issues, you have, this year you ended with about $2.5 million. This upcoming summer, we're anticipating to be about 2.2. Your total payments, we've got prepayments, 2.18 million in 25, but then 1.916,000, then about 1.4, and those balances quickly grow to 3, 4, 5 million. So that's what indicates with that 99-cent levy, you are in position for a no tax increase bond issue based on the strength of those balances. And we also, in addition to the next no tax increase bond issues, we can accelerate some principal on this refunding, pay it off slightly faster, and save additional interest expense. So on page 7, we have the proposed repayment plan for the refunding bonds. And so we have about 1.2 million of principal moved up into 27, and that's to fill some holes that were created by previous prepayments that you all have made to save on interest expense. And then the remainder of the maturities, 2032 to 37. So this will actually be shortening the length of the financings by 3 full years by moving some of that principal out and being able to pay them off a bit faster to save additional interest expense. The coupon would be 4%, 1% lower than the 5% on the initial financings. The effective interest rate would be about 3.65% because there would be a premium on this financing as well the investors would pay. That's specified on page 8. The pricing summary illustrates the 4% coupon. The third column in from the left-hand side of the page. The fourth column in from the left-hand side are those yields of 3% to 3.75. And then in the center, maturity value, $8,855,000 of bonds. The investors would be paying a price over 100%, so they're effectively buying that higher interest rate of 4% from the district. That produces a premium on the far right-hand side, $9,040,775. The difference between those two is $185,775. So the investors are buying that higher interest rate, and it produces $185,000 of upfront premium. So looking at it, one way to look at how the premium works is, depending on where rates are, this financing goes out to 37. One of the main purchasers of the bonds are local banks. So if rates were to go up or over that period of time, it insulates banks if they do rise. So the one way to look at it is the bank says, by buying that higher coupon, if you hand me a $4 bill, I'll hand you back $1 right now, and that's the yield of 3%. So you add up those differences of hand me $4, I'll hand you back $1, and that's how you arrive at that premium of $185,000. On page 9, Schedule 4B, debt service comparison, is where we just line up the existing payments on the 2020 and 21 financings. Those are the third column in from the right-hand side. The fourth column in from the right-hand side is the new schedule, and so we just subtract the two. The savings column, second in from the right, is the math of the subtracting the two columns. Where the savings is negative, that's where principal has been pushed up to shorten the length of the financing by 3 years. So in total, at the bottom of the savings column, the total savings is $2,300,000 with a rounding amount of about $2,400. So just over 2.3 million of savings. On page 10, we have the sources and uses of funds. The par amount for the refunding bonds, $8,855,000. So we're able to refinance $9 million with less than $9 million due to that premium paid by the investors of $185,000. We would also close this financing in early December once we're eligible to, and reinvest these proceeds until the March 1st call date to earn as much money as possible over those 3 months. And you'll actually be able to earn more than what you're paying, just to the nature of how high short-term rates still are in spite of the Fed making some cuts. So we've got the reinvestment of the proceeds under the uses. The total cost of issuance are itemized below, and those total $117,605. So the premium more than covers the cost of issuance, and then the earnings is what allows for the reduction from $9 million to $8,855,000. Now switching gears, this is now just purely informational. The only action item is just to proceed with the final terms committee, which would be Tom Pizarkowitz, president of our firm, Dr. Robinson, and your board president, till once we get closer to 1 month out from December to move and market these to the local banks and other investors in the area. So proceeding with the refunding is the only thing for approval on the agenda later this evening. This next piece is just informational for the next round of projects. We have ran the calculations paired with the refunding savings for a potential election at the April 8th, 2025, or 1 year from now, April 7th, 2026. So page 11 is the calculation of the district's legal bonding capacity in 2025 at the April election. Districts can borrow up to 15% of their assessed valuation. So we have the current assessed valuation of 160 million, top right corner. We take into account all the bonds already outstanding, and so the legal capacity of the district would be 11.7 million. Your current levy, due in part to large assessed valuation growth and the savings from prepayments and refundings, allows for 11 million without increasing that tax levy. If you wait 1 additional year with growth in assessed valuation and further payments on your outstanding bond issues, that legal capacity grows by 2 million. So it would calculate to 13,527,000. You could afford 13 million without increasing your 99-cent levy. Excess amount about 527,000. And so then on pages 13 and 14, we have the updated columns from the cash flow statements. On page 13, reflecting that $11 million bond issue, balances remain very healthy. After you make all your payments, including the new bonds, you'd have well over $1 million left over. Your total payments would be, about 1.8 million compared to about 1.3 to 1.4. And once again, that's just assuming that conservative 2% growth rate. If you all continue closer to 6.5, those balances in the purple column would be much higher. Page 14, the last page, is the waiting 1 year out, adding $2 million of legal capacity for 13 million. Looking at that purple column, once again, it's very healthy, about 1.7 million after you make all of your payments. And then the total payments would be about 1.9, a lot of those first 5 years. The last report that I'll review before turning it over to Wesley for the actual resolution is just one of the things we like to keep track of. When Larry Hart started our company, we've been able to work with over 300 of the 518 or so public schools in Missouri, and that's due to Larry's commitment to short call features. Larry moved down here from Wyoming because he saw, we're all familiar with a mortgage on a house. You can make a prepayment at any time, you can refinance any time. Well, with bond issues, you can only make a prepayment or refinance based on the terms of your call feature. And back when Larry first started, he saw all the financings for schools in Missouri had call features of 10 years or a lot of times not even callable, which is great for the investor, but if rates drop, you don't have an ability to refinance. So looking back, we have on report 1 a listing of all the GO bonds registered with the Missouri State Auditor in 2021, when we issued that $4 million second piece with a 4-year call feature to combine with the piece in 2020. Our firm issued 68 bonds, 65 of 68 had call features of 5 years or less. Anybody else doing business in the state, most of them did 0 financings with call features 5 years or less, some did 1 or 2. And then on the next page we have the 2020 bonds. We had 96 as a firm, 82 of the 96 had call features of 5 years or less. And it's a similar thing, a lot of the other firms doing business had 0, 1, I think the next firm had 3. And so in this case, with the Fed starting to cut interest rates, lining up nicely with your bonds becoming callable, those short call features that Larry somewhat pioneered is directly what allows you to potentially realize this 2.3 million of savings. So we're very, very proud of what we've been able to achieve working with the district on that original project. I know that election back in 2020 was right in the middle of the pandemic. It actually got moved statewide from April till June. And you all did a great job to get that passed. And we're very happy that things are lining up to save quite a bit of money for the district with this potential refinancing. I'll turn over to Wesley for the resolution, which is the action item.
This is the final document in the packet. Before we get to it, are there any questions about any of the numbers that Brad just went over? Well, this is the document that needs board approval to move forward tonight. And I won't go through the entire legal document, but if you turn to page 3, that paragraph at the top in all capital letters, that's kind of a summary of the entire resolution. So it's basically directing the issuance and delivery not to exceed $9 million in principal, and for the purpose of redeeming the $6 million and the $3 million principal of the original bonds. The next section I'll look at is on page 6.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The next section is on page 6, section 2.2. The description of the bond, it's on the bottom of that page, and then on the top of the next page. And still on top of the next page, the rates and the yield are blank. And again, the bond sales are not final yet, so that's why this is called a parameters resolution. And this section, the final terms committee will determine the interest rates, the prices, and things like that. And Brad mentioned earlier who's involved in that, will be your superintendent, board president, and then the president of our company. And the third line from the bottom is kind of the parameter we're looking at. If the bond yield for arbitrage does not exceed 4.25%, then the final terms committee can go ahead and finalize the sale in a few weeks without coming back to the full board. If for some reason the market changed and you could not get that good of a rate, then we need to come back before the full board for consideration. The next section is on page 12, section 3.1. And this is the section that identifies the 5-year call feature that Brad just mentioned. So at the option of the district, on March 1st, 2030, you can refund these at any time. Again, it's kind of the option of the district is critical. If it's in your financial interest to do it, best interest, then you can do it. If it's not, you do not have to. And then on page 25, section 11.6 is your continuing disclosure requirement. That is a requirement of the district to, at the end of each year, to turn in your audit and some other operating data, financial information to Emma. And this is for the investors that own the bond, so they can see what kind of financial shape the district is in. It is the district's responsibility, but it's something we do for free for the service of our clients. And a lot of firms will charge
$1,500 a year.
or more a year.
We don't charge.
But it's one of the things we offer for our clients. And then the final section I'll have you look at is page 29, section 1110. And this is a paragraph that specifies the final terms committee that was mentioned. Any questions about any of this information?
Not any questions, but just a comment that the relationship that we have with you all has been very healthy for our district.
Yes.
So we really appreciate all the information and the work that you do on your end to help us.
Thank you. It does go both ways. Y'all been a very good client for us too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Can I ask one question?
Oh, yes, we do have one question.
You said we reinvest proceeds until March.
Yes.
What do we invest that in? Do you invest that, does that come to the school? and
No,
we
so
do it, or-
that is a great question. And so, as underwriters, we're not really allowed to be involved in reinvestment, especially like of new money proceeds, but on refundings, we work with the paying agent because the IRS stipulates that it has to be invested in state and local government securities to be totally safe. It can't be invested in anything where there's a risk of the principal not being there on March 1. And so the paying agent will just purchase those state and local government securities to go from, I think we've got like December 3rd, I think is our potential closing date for this. So from December 3rd to March 1st, those will be reinvested by the paying agent. And that's just IRS regulations really limit what it can be invested. But with the nature of short-term rates, and over the summer when we were doing all the new money bond issues, before the Fed made their first cut, schools were able to reinvest in just treasury securities over 5%, and the average yield on the 20-year financings was like 3.8%. So they're paying effectively 3.8 and earning 5.25 on 3 months. So it's wild. And although the Fed made that first cut, we're still in a position to earn more on a 3 month than what you're paying. So and the IRS typically doesn't like bond proceeds, either refunding or new money, to earn more than what's being paid, but they offer two exemptions. One is on a tax exempt current refunding like this over that 3 month period from December to March. So that's one where you're allowed to earn more than you're paying. The other would be a new money bond issue as long as you spend the proceeds within 3 years and the size of the issue is not more than 15 million in a calendar year. So that's something, depending on what rates do, whenever you go in 25 or 26, you would be under that with either an 11 million or 13 million dollar financing. But if rates stayed high, you could issue all 11 or 13 and reinvest those if rates haven't been cut more by the Fed. That would allow you for 3 years to earn more than what you're paying. So that you're in one of the two buckets of exemption to be allowed to earn more than what you pay. So that's a great question.
Yep. And what was the total amount of savings?
It's about 2,302,000 is what we're projecting. We're somewhat conservative with these yields. We're actually gonna try to push them as low as we can get, and we hope to do better than the 2.3 million that we have projected here this evening.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We'll let our guests get situated. Now we'll move on to the future building project update.
Yeah, now that we've kind of seen some of the numbers, and obviously saving over $2 million is always a good thing. One of the things I've been working with the architect is to kind of look at, obviously we just talked about some bond issue capabilities in April of 25 to April of 26. Obviously we could continue that out. You're adding about $1.5 million to $2 million every year just based on what we have. So you can continue that out, 15 million whatsoever in 27. But I did go through and work with the architect on trying to at least come up with some ideas. Now this is pretty preliminary information, and we just took some ideas that I had that I presented a couple times throughout the year and what it would take to do those projects. Again, I think it'd be important to go out to our stakeholders, kind of find out what the importance of these are, where they value these projects at, and then look at it through that lens. But, you know, we do obviously have about $11 million we could use in April this year without raising any taxes, which is always important, and then obviously 13 the next year. But just looking at it, if you want to write down these numbers, if we were to look at new classrooms at the high school, which would effectively be getting rid of the old south wing of the high school, that's the only part that's really we haven't redone anything, I guess, on that aspect. You know, 12 to 14 new classrooms, which would include, you know, the classrooms we're already housing there now. Kind of probably a 2-story type addition, similar to what the middle school. Obviously, we don't have like where it's going to go. We haven't done that far, but for that cost, you're looking at about $5.4 million to probably redo and take down the old part of the high school. Now,
Dr. Robinson, I know
Yeah.
you're, but just real quickly, would that include the current library or the current front counseling center area?
Probably around the front counseling center, kind of the, what would be in the old library, back in the
Right.
70s, 80s, maybe even 90s. And then just pretty well that whole south wing. So, that would take care of all of
So the
that.
current library and art wing, that would stay,
Yes, right now that would stay.
okay?
Yep. Yep, that would stay. So we're looking at about 5.4 million for that proposed project. If we were looking at early childhood center, maybe have some dual purpose, since that would, you know, one of the places I think was, since we bought the ball fields years ago from the city, was that we could put our early childhood center close to our, you know, other elementary school. So that would be near Parkview. You could maybe make some dual purpose there and put restrooms, concession stand, whatever it may be for your softball, baseball in that facility. But for our early childhood center, that would, you know, house all of our early childhood special ed, title, and our preschools, we're looking at about $3.75 million on a building of that nature. And then if we were to look at redoing some of our baseball and softball fields, that would be, you know, making the infields turf, making the baseball field actually, well, effectively regulation. We don't have a regulation baseball field now. It's pretty short in the corners. You would look at about $2 million if you were to do that project, because you'd have to move lights, move quite a bit of stuff. And the other one that we're looking at, because we've done a lot of roof projects with high school, obviously the middle school was redone, well, it's brand new in 14, and we're still in pretty good shape with CIS, but to do a roof replacement at Parkview, you're looking at about $850,000, which would be a complete takedown and redo on the roof. So if you're doing your math, you're right around $12 million if we did everything right now. You know, and that's about $1 million more than we have if we tried to do something in this April. That doesn't mean that we can't prioritize and say, hey, we're going to do some this April, we're going to wait a year or two and then come back and do you know, the rest of the projects, however it may be. And again, I think that's where we get the public input on what they think is important and what we need to do first. But it's about $12 million. And then you can probably, you'd like to figure that, you know, if we have, you know, every year you're going to add to that 12 million, probably another 3 to 5%, just for building cost. And that's probably the increase you're going to see every year. So, you know, that 12 million could, you know, it's going to be another $500,000 about every other year to add on to it. So, so then you go to 12, 5, 13, and such. So it actually gets a little bit bigger than that. But that's just kind of the preliminary numbers. Like I said, I don't think we have to make any decisions tonight. Honestly, if we are interested, we have a lot of months to talk about this, but because I think our drop dead deadline would be January 28th, before we'd have to let the county clerks know that we would put something on the ballot for April. So we have a little bit of time. I think the next step that I'd like to do is kind of get a survey ready so that we can start sending that out, talking to talking to our constituents, just kind of finding out their thoughts, ideas, and where we're at on that, and then come back to the board. I'm not sure if that'll be November, December, depends how fast we can get this done, but, and then like I said, we still have plenty of time to be able to sit down and really think about it as a board, what direction we want to go and how much we want to get done and what we, you know, the community and the board see as priority, so.
Is any of this, could any of this include, I don't know what the cost would be, replacing our maintenance area, moving that to another
We didn't
spot?
add that, but we probably need to look at that, and we've talked about that with, you know, building our own busing barn and doing something with our own transportation. We don't, they would then effectively pay us for the lease, if we did something like that. We do need to be looking at it. We didn't, it's not gonna be $1 million to replace our maintenance and do those pieces, but I can see, you know, by the time you do everything we need to do, it could be a good $500,000
Okay.
to do something like that.
I've been hearing a few
Yeah,
concerns about.
well, we're probably a little bit on borrowed time. That was the building that we used to store like a lot of our paper and other things was the old Vision Audio building. You know, it was old when we bought it. So, and we knew that, but we needed a place to be able to put storage and put things, and actually it's probably paid for itself just in what we've been able to save in paper by buying it by a truckload instead of a pallet at a time. And so over, you know, 10, 12 years, how many years we've owned that, I think probably 12 or 13 actually, we've probably paid for it just in paper savings alone, being able to store some of our stuff in there, so. But yeah, that could definitely be added to the list. I was just trying to look at items that I talked about that were, I think, the big priorities that I was hearing and talking about. Like I said, these may not even be on the list of other people, but I think it's good information. I appreciate our architects getting back to us so quickly on. Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
When we did the renovations of the high school recently, how long were our students displaced or in other buildings or other rooms? Like how long would you foresee the 12 to 14 new classrooms taking?
Well, it depends on where you put them. If you moved them further west and you kind of put them off in addition towards like where the library is at now and kind of went 2 stories into that direction there, you may not have to displace hardly at all because you'd be able to keep your south wing and do that. When we did the past project, obviously we redid all the science classrooms and we took down the whole north wing. So we had to displace pretty much that north wing was language arts. So we had to move around wrestling because now all of a sudden language arts took wrestling and the weights, but then we put the mezzanine. So we were kind of always moving things in a circle, but we obviously didn't have science classrooms pretty well that whole year. We were having to meet in other classrooms. But I'd like to see if we did something where, like I said, you take the building south from that area, you shouldn't have to displace too much. You might have to do some with your parking again, because that's where they're gonna set up and do all their stuff. And so you might have your kids displaced with parking for, you know, a year again, because of where they're gonna have to stage all their equipment and all those pieces. But the goal would be that we wouldn't have to displace too much, because we did have to do, we had about a year's, well, actually we probably had about 6-7 months worth. I think it wasn't really till about Christmas time that I think we really got into the point where we couldn't have kids going down that main hallway there for a while. So, but we got lucky. We had a great fall and winter that year where kids didn't mind running outside to go to classes. So.
Other questions, comments?
I have one.
Yeah.
Could the softball fields and the Parkview roof, could that come under capital projects or would it have to go under the bond?
We might be able to do some of that with capital projects. I don't know that we would have $2 million with capital projects to be able to pull out of there. We still have to pay some debt out of there. We have we still have a good capital projects, but that's going to go down because we just spent, you know, almost $1.5 million to $1.8 million, you know, $1.8 million just on that, you know, stuff this summer to bring that down and make some needed improvements. So I don't know that we would have quite enough. The roof replacement, I think we would probably have enough. I don't think we'd have enough to say we have 3 million, because right now we just have, I think, 3 million in there, and we haven't paid all of our bills yet, so.
And so,
We have-
in the baseball, softball fields, you really think it would take 2 million to do that job?
I think you're getting pretty close to that. Yeah, your softball field is gonna be quite considerably easier just because it's pretty well, it's already a regulation field. You wouldn't have to do much other than dirt work and redo your infield. Your baseball is a different story. To get the distance you need to make a field, that regulation, you're gonna have to move it. You're gonna have to move a little bit to the southwest, you're gonna have to move a little bit to the east and a little bit to the north. And then by the time you start moving, now you're into your lights. And now you gotta start moving your lights and doing all those pieces. And effectively, you get a regulation field, you'd be into your concession stand that you have now to be able to put your baseball field, make it close. And then you're probably still talking about having to put a taller fence in left field. Kind of a la the Green Monster in Boston, if you wanted to make it, a regulation baseball type field, because you're still not gonna have enough room. We only go about 5 feet past that fence and you're on the golf course property, so. And you're on a pretty good hill, so we'd have to disrupt a lot of golf and build up a hill and.
I've had a lot of balls in left field.
Yeah, I picked up a lot of balls in the field, so does the baseball team, so.
Dr. Robinson, one thing that I would like to see us just investigate, I know that you're loath to put a central office facility, because, you've always said, that's not the most important thing, but I would love to see us consider the possibility that within that early childhood center, I don't know what the cost would be to add administrative offices and.
I mean, we've got luxury of having pretty big offices here, just because we've got old classrooms.
They are big.
We
are
obviously
100 years
don't need
old.
that much space. And you're right, that would be something that we could look at.
I just
I would
think
not
that-
want to add too much to the cost, I would agree. I would
Yeah.
rather make sure that we have other stuff for,
I know.
this building is still structurally good.
It is,
So.
and I guess, it's 100 years old,
Yeah.
and it's the front door to
Yeah.
the district for employees, and
It very much is. I just, with all the other things that seem like going on
I
downtown
understand.
and buildings and talking about tearing down, I don't want to be part of the,
I understand.
I don't want to be part of the blight if we leave a building. And,
Right.
and like I said, I think we're at least still an anchor. We're something that, we're close to downtown. We're. But I think it's something we can actually look at. I mean, we don't have a lot of space we need with the amount of people here, so.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
some thoughtful foresight with respect to the disposition, the
Mhm.
respectful disposition of this building. I mean, maybe there is use for it, but regardless, that's
Yeah,
a.
no, I get it. So.
You're thinking early childhood, we would maybe incorporate the concession stand and stuff like it in
Well, I think
that
you
building?
could, I mean, if you kept your baseball and softball fields there and you put your concession, you could build your concession and restrooms
Restrooms.
right into that complex and then serve dual purposes, you could have it for the day and then at night you close out that area and then you could use it for your night activities and, then right now, we're gonna be fairly fortunate, softball's wrapping up their season right now before we've had the first frost, but a lot of times in baseball, our restrooms aren't even available until about mid-April when we're sure that we're not gonna have a broken water line, so we don't even have any restroom unless we have porta potties or something like that because of just the conditions in the room, the space, so.
Would the classrooms be larger than the classroom sizes that we have?
Yeah,
now?
you would, those were built for, 1960, 1970s, so kids are just bigger. So yeah, those are accounting for bigger classrooms, yes.
Which would be history, math. We would leave science alone. 'Cause
Yeah,
then-
science is all brand new, so you really would be looking at some of your DECA, some special ed, Project Lead the Way, some business, math, social studies, so.
How many classrooms do we have now?
There's around 12 to 14 in that hallway. So.
All right.
Other questions? I appreciate that. I think
Yeah.
it is time, I think, to maybe look at surveying our patrons and getting some input from the public and continuing to,
Well, we're in good financial shape as far as what you just heard from LJ Hart and their people. So we're in a good position to be able to do something, if it's not April this year, for the future. So we're in good positions to continue to update and make sure that our students and faculty have the best facilities we can have. So,
On the Parkview roof,
mhm.
if we don't, how much life is left? When do we hit a critical point where it doesn't matter if we do
We're not
this or not?
we're not at a critical point. We're probably more critical on the south part of the high school. We're running on fumes, for lack of a better word, but we, yeah, the roofing over there, we've had quite a few different ones. The deterioration's getting there, it's pretty bad. And even the air conditioning units, all the HVAC, I mean, we kept all the units from the north wing to be able to continue to service our south wing. So we kept every one of those before we tore the building down. We took all those out so that we could keep them for the parts, to keep that south wing going. So it's probably more of a priority. I don't want to put a number, but I'd say you're probably, at Parkview, you're within 5 years of needing a roof replacement, but you're probably, like I said, we're probably pretty close to borrowed time on, you know, the roof on the south end of the high school, so.
So if we don't move on something like this, we would be replacing the high school roof even,
Yeah.
and then tearing it down.
And then tearing it down,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
yeah, I'd say you have nowhere in a couple of years where we're gonna not have major issues.
Okay.
And we probably still have issues now. I mean, unfortunately, even new roofs will find, water finds a way, so.
Do you ever foresee an addition to Parkview, like building more space there? I
Well,
guess
if
you
we would
take
do
early
early,
childhood
if you take
out-
early childhood out, you would actually free up about 6 classrooms. I'm trying to think. I mean, because you could put parents as teachers, you could put a lot of other people in your early childhood buildings, so you would actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms. Dr. Wormsby, is that right? If we took preschool, title, early childhood out?
We have 6 preschool classrooms and then parents as teachers, so 7.
7, yeah. So you'd be freeing up 7 classrooms for any future growth or space or whatever it may be.
I just would like to see at some point added or talked about building an actual gym there at Parkview instead of using the basement. I know we have a really nice gym there at the, when you enter, but that's the cafeteria.
Well, we use it,
And use
yeah,
it
every
all the
morning.
time.
We use it at lunch, so you're limited on your PE, obviously, because you're constantly using it for serving food.
Right, so down the line at some point, I'd like to have
No.
that added or.
No, that's something we can look at too. I mean, that we've talked before, just, in conversations, because we've seen other gyms that have been FEMA grants and different things like that, that could be a possibility. Offer some more protection and, and it isn't bad to have another gym. I mean, I think we're pretty good space, but with having 3 wood floored gyms, that's a really nice luxury for a school our size, but having another one where, like you said, you could also use for a tornado shelter for the school, or usually those tie in with the community.
Right.
A certain radius of community can get to that as well, so.
Absolutely.
are you envisioning joining those buildings or they would be separate?
No, I think I envision kind of a separate building, yeah. Although I don't envision if we would do an early childhood to keep the cost down, a full kitchen. I mean, I would think we would just transport from Parkview to early childhood for food service, because you throw a kitchen in there and you've added $1 million.
Kitchens are expensive.
They are very expensive.
Any other comments or questions? I really appreciate you bringing all this information back to us. That's a lot of information, and we can continue to have these conversations as we look forward and make plans and goals and that kind of thing. Anything else? We're going to move on then to Dr. Utek.
All right, I think kind of a pregame of my board report, but this is the meat and potatoes of it, so my board report will be extremely short. So I wanted to bring to our attention some comparisons between the 22, 23, 24 MAP and EOC data. I really just want to caution everyone right now, though, that this is still embargoed by the state of Missouri, DESE department. These have not been released, so they are not considered public and completed. However, we find value in, as soon as we can, to take a look at this, because right now we're already 5 to 6 months out from our students sitting in the seats taking the test. So it's kind of like that, the dead on arrival. You can't really do much with it except for look at trends and pathways and what may have caused certain trends trending up or trending backward or status quo. But so I just wanted to put that out there, that this is not official. If it changes, it shouldn't change too very much though, because the Board of Education, the State Board of Education shared their preliminary results, which are in my board packet, and also noted in this in August at their official board meeting as well. So the first page, I know it looks like a lot of colors, but I kind of want to explain this. So on the left column, you have the subjects and the grade levels and the EOC and things like that, grade level assessments and EOCs. And then prior to that gray line, those next three columns are Proficient and Advanced District 2022, Proficient and Advanced State 2022. And then I analyzed it for above or below, and I made it nice and pretty so we can look at it. If it's red, it's obviously not at proficient state level. If it's green, it is. It meets or exceeds. So I believe in our CSIP, the goal is to be above state average. And so I did that for the 2021-22 school year, 22-23 school year, and then this previous school year we just wrapped up in May. So as you can see, our goal is to grow the green. And we've done that, especially from last year in some specific areas. We still have some areas of need, so I'm going to point some of those out to you. So our significant improvement overall was in ELA in 23-24 compared to the state scores. And the green is above state average. And in 21-22 and 22-23, we were only above the state average in a couple grade levels, 1 to 2. But in this previous year, we were above the state average in 5 grade levels, which was exactly the same for math. So we needed to improve ELA. I remember standing here about a year ago saying that, and we did. So thank you to everyone, students, staff, parents, community, you all, everybody who, teachers who did all of that work to get our students to closer to proficiency in almost all areas. We're going to get there soon. It's a process, it takes time. So we did have some steady performance for math, but we also had 5 grade levels above the state average. Our goal would be to continue that growth. So as I stand here now, maybe looking back next year, hoping that those green areas become an increase. If we look at science, it's a relatively steady, but it's really difficult science. We only test science 5th and 8th, and then an EOC biology. So it's very difficult to say a cohort or to say like growth over time, because it's not the same students, it's every 3 years. But I do want to say we're looking pretty good there. We're only slightly below in one area that was also the previous year, or I'm sorry, 2 previous years prior to. And so we are consistently more likely than not going to be performing along higher than the state average. Social studies is also an anomaly. We only have one social studies assessment, and that's the EOC, government EOC, and that's been above the state average all 3 years that I looked at the trends. Any questions about that chart so far? Well, I'm always open to phone calls, questions, anything that you might have. The next one is a chart that's a little bit more interesting. We don't look at data one way and say we're done. We have to look at data in several ways to make it tell a story. So what does the data tell a story of? And so what I've done in this chart is to take a look at students that were assessed in 3rd, then 4th, and 5th, and how they did each successive years, which is why you see NA for that 3rd grade. They took it one time, and that was the 2024. So as you go across, you can see how our students performed from 2022 to 23 to 24. So as third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, or sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders. So I stuck with the 3 years. We can go back further, but it's just more pertinent to kind of look at same data from both charts. So we definitely have areas to celebrate. We also have some areas of need that we need to grow in. This cohort analysis allows us to follow the scores really for each class as they progress through the system. So as we pass them from one school to the next, from CIS to CVMS, our principals and our teachers and our know what to kind of expect in areas, and I know that all of our principals have actually looked deeper into this and uncovered by standard that where we have performed over last year to this year. So they've even taken it even further. And doing that, we've identified areas that we may have just some deficiencies in, and maybe it's something that we need to beef up and teach a little bit more, a standard, or maybe it's the way that question was asked and we didn't teach it to the level of depth of knowledge, or it's a standard that we was assessed a different way, or from one year to assessed a different way, and then in multiple choice we did better, but then when we asked them to write out the performance event, we didn't perform as well. So we're looking at assessment type questions too. That way we can help our students be ready when they get to that test. It's not so overwhelming, because it's a very overwhelming test. And I do want to bring up that we can only have 1% of our students be exempted from the state assessment. We have a lot of special education students who do take this assessment, and sometimes they have other alternative ways that they learn and gain knowledge, but then they have to take the rigorous math assessment, which is kind of hard to watch sometimes, but our kids do great. They get through it. It is a very time intensive, very, very much, you would think when we were in school, it was like the 3 days of assessment. We're talking a month of assessment. So it is a lot. Some of the areas I'd like to point out are in 2024, our third graders performed better than our previous third graders in both of the other cohorts, so that's improvement. Also, our fourth graders performed better than the previous 2 fourth grade classes in ELA, and slightly below in math, but we were already almost at 50%, which is extremely high above the state level. In 2024, sixth graders performed better than previous 2 sixth grade classes in ELA, and they improved in math from the 2023 sixth grade class. So that's kind of the apples to oranges. Now, apples to apples, fourth graders increased, 2024 fourth graders increased significantly from third to fourth grade, both in ELA and in math, if you look across both of those rows. 2024 fifth grade and seventh graders experienced a decrease. And so those are going to be areas that we take a look at for intervention. And I know that's already been happening probably since day one. And actually, I've been working in a classroom that's been happening. Action, it meets I guess our information creates action. And then 2024 eighth graders increased significantly in ELA and math. But math is different. So I want you to kind of look at the math score a little bit, and Mr. Stickle and I have talked about this multiple times. This is not just a Cameron thing, it's statewide. We have 2 different groups of students in 8th grade that take the MAP, but they also then have a upper level math group that takes the EOC. They don't take the math test. So then what we're doing is we're kind of not testing the same group of students from year to year to year. So it's very difficult to look at that and say that that's a valid score, because if you add in our EOC, which was extremely high.
94.4%.
There you go. I knew it. I knew it. We actually did pretty well. So that just is not factored in when you look at this chart, which is the results from DESE. So that is what I have to say about that. What questions do you have for me? It's a lot of information. It's not financial, because I don't know. But this stuff I can help with.
Yeah, just so the community knows, you take half of your 8th grade and they go on to Algebra 1.
Yes.
And then we have the other, so we do start splitting our kids out, and so you're not going to have all those kids saying those.
They will take the Algebra 1
scores,
too.
we'd be above the state average.
Yes.
We'd be combined scores, yeah.
And they will eventually take, if they're not exempt, they will take the EOC Algebra 1. They just take it when they get the instruction in high school.
Right.
We just instruct a group of students who show aptitude so that way we can accelerate them on the back end too. They can take college level classes when they're in high school. So we're meeting kids where they are in the learning, so.
And a kid, I always say, kid is more than their score,
Mhm.
although, I mean, I truly believe that. Maybe because I was not a great test taker, but a kid is more than their score. But we can see definite growth.
Yeah,
yes.
and at the state level, I just want to mention, this is in its infancy stage, they are looking at alternative ways to show growth just outside of the autopsy is what this is. There should be interim measures in every district, however, we don't emulate that for proficiency at the state level. So there is a group of educators, but also just a group of lots of people trying to check into that. And it is a federal waiver for that innovative assessment group. And so there is more to be coming out about that. And I actually will get to hear a little bit more about that in some of my upcoming meetings. But this is what we have now. So this is what we're going to use. So.
Thank you for your leadership on this.
Oh, sure.
Alrighty. Thank you, Dr. Utah, appreciate that. We'll move forward to Ms. Crawford. And go on to our administrative reports.
Alrighty. I do want to tack on to something she said. She mentioned that some of the special education students have like accommodations, but in grades 3 through 5, if we read to them, we get a level not determined, so we don't get to provide accommodations to students that struggle with reading. So just keep that in mind too when we look at those scores. It's really kind of unfair to students that we provide accommodations all the way through because that's what they need and the team determines that, and then we're not allowed to provide that. So, and that goes all the way up through high school with certain accommodations we can't provide. So that's just my plug there. A couple things. I think I reported last time we had our Special Olympics flag football event. So I included some pictures for you guys on the board report. Great day. Our next event, so our board game day got changed. Mid-Buck changed it to a day that we are not in session. So we are going to do our own board game day, and we are pulling some high school students that will be coming down and playing board games with our middle school and high school life skills classrooms to learn how to take turns, rules of the game, and do some social interaction there. So we're going to try to do another board game day with other school districts later this school year possibly, but we're gonna make up that one. And then the next big event is bowling, and that is November 21st. We are hosting that. It's happening at the Plattsburgh Bowling Alley, but we are hosting that. Plattsburgh's actually not joining us, even though it's in their town. So. So just a heads up on Special Olympics. We just completed our some of our reports for DESE, and I wanted to report that we had an increase of 21 students, special education students last year. So that was a big increase. We try to keep class sizes small. That was a big increase in students. We keep seeing that. More and more students are moving to us. So that's a big thing there. And then the last thing I wanted to report on, well, two more things. Early childhood screening, we screened about 15 students on our half day, which was great. We had a couple babies that came through screenings as well. So we have, the next screenings are all in the spring. So we're still getting more kiddos that we need into our program. So that was a good turnout for our half day homecoming screening. And then last thing is on Monday, we had an in-service day and we brought in our paraprofessionals. And Dr. Robinson allowed us to bring in our paras and have Summit Behavioral come in. And they had, we had a behavior expert, a BCBA, talk about behaviors in students that have exhibited trauma. And it went over fantastic. The paras really fed into that. Our paras are the ones that are in the trenches with our kids. If a kid needs a break or a kid needs something specific, classroom moves on and the para usually handles that. But unfortunately, they're usually people with not as much training as the teachers. And so we've really focused on that the last couple of years. We went in with other school districts and tried to provide extra training So when we had this opportunity, Dr. Robinson said yes, if they want to come in, they could come in. Great responses from everybody. We actually had our elementary assistants both there, and they asked to bring her back in to talk to everybody, every teacher, because we are experiencing more and more students that have behavioral needs that are outside of what we would typically see in previous years, and students that are exhibiting signs of trauma that we've never seen before as well. So it was a great response. Parents loved it. I have received a lot of emails saying thank you, that they've heard bits and pieces when we talk about different plans for students or what we're doing, but they didn't understand always the why. They just jumped in and did it because we said so. And so getting them that education behind it was very powerful. So thank you guys for allowing that. ELL, English Language Learners. So students that English is not their primary language.
We have 11 of those.
We currently have 11.
And how do we accommodate them as?
So we provide language services. We have a special education teacher / ELL teacher that does language services. And then we provide accommodations. So we use a lot of Google Translate. Some of our students have iPads that we can translate back and forth. When you go to trainings on ELL, they tell you immersion is the best. So we try not to use too many of those resources. So kids, we're not constantly using an iPad to translate, and they have to figure that out. And their parents are very strict on that as well, most of them. But we do have language services, so kids can get anywhere. We have 30 minutes of language services, up to 2 hours, depending on the student's need. We have somebody that provides that service. We have a screening that the kiddos have to take, and based on their scoring on the screening, then that's where we look at providing the services. And they have a plan, so just like an IEP or a 504, students that qualify for ELL have a specific plan that provides accommodations, how their testing looks, and what they need in order to grow.
And are the majority of them at Parkview?
Nope, they're spread out
They're
all
really-
over. We have high school, Parkview all the way up to the high school, and spread out.
I was able to chat with Mary one day, and she explained to me that they all take the MAP test too, in English.
Yes, so the only waiver on that is if they've been in the country, not in Cameron, but in the country for less than a year. Otherwise, they are tested just like everybody else. In English. So yes, that was the other thing. We called Dusty because we were trying to argue that they are tested in English. They do not get to take a Spanish MAP test or a Spanish EOC. So goes right back into what we previously talked about, like the accommodations. We give kids what they need to be more successful or as successful as possible all year, and then when it comes to state testing, we rip it all away and say, just do it. So
How many languages do we cover?
we only cover 2. So now when you look at Spanish, you can have different dialects,
Sure.
but it goes under Spanish. So
I really appreciate the in-service for the parents, anything to help support those people. I know staffing, particularly with 21 new students, and staffing continues to be a challenge, that whatever we can do to support.
And invest in them.
Yes, so great. Glad to hear that.
it's very beneficial.
And it looks like you have about 257 kiddos that are under your
That's for special education.
bed.
That's not 504s or ELL or
Yeah.
any of the,
So we probably have about 300 or so kids receiving some kind of,
I think it was 315 the last I looked, but that fluctuates as kids move in, and we're always like qualifying students, so. Or they're receiving interventions at their schools to see if they need to be evaluated.
Sure. Other questions for Ms. Carl? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys.
Dr. Horn.
Good evening. All right, I wanted to reflect a little bit on my board report and just highlight some of the pieces that were included, starting with our academic data summary. I think you probably can see, just with a bird's eye view, that we have quite an increase from last year, we can see definite trends improving on our students who are proficient and are maintaining proficiency from the previous year. We saw that with the RSPs. We have fewer students who are qualifying for an RSP than did so last year. And the majority of our kids that came off of an RSP at the end of the school year or not going back on one this school year. We had a handful that did, but the majority were able to stay off of it. So I think that's a testament to the hard work of our staff and our kiddos as well. I do wish the state would allow us to get those kids in and kind of wake them up from going through the summer and not doing a whole lot of reading, but instead we bring them in and we're supposed to assess them within the first 30 days of the school year, and then we are forced to use that first assessment score to determine what we're going to do with them for the rest of the year. I have a plethora of kids who already would qualify to come off of an RSP, and we haven't even met with parents to get the RSP signed yet, but we're still tied to that initial test score. So that's a little bit frustrating, but it's not going to hurt them. Still great to work with them and give them all the support that they need and make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. I also wanted to share with you just a little bit out of my newsletter that I sent out at the end of September. I can find my screenshot of it. I highlighted executive functioning skills, and I think I've talked to you about that before, but that is one of the indicators that we're focusing on at Parkview this year with teachers working with kids on developing those executive functioning skills. I chose to put that in my newsletter because I think it's something that needs to start at home as soon as parents are able. Executive functioning skills are just a set of mental skills that help people manage everyday tasks, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. And you can start with your toddler. It's important to plan with a kid, to give them a visual, to let them know what's getting ready to happen, not surprise them. You know how sometimes people say, I don't like surprises as adults. Well, kids don't like surprises either. It leads to them getting upset, and you can do a lot with a kid if you just provide them with an idea of what's coming so that they aren't caught off guard. Kids being able to pay attention, to attain to a task. A lot of that goes back to screen time, how much time a child is spending. It used to be in front of the TV, but now of course it's on a cell phone or an iPad. Some kids, also have the TV time in there too. But just good old-fashioned going outside, playing in the dirt, working those gross motor skills, that's what's important to develop the parts of the brain that allow a child to settle down and be able to pay attention to a task. Working memory, helping a child to develop their working memory begins with breaking things down into chunks. And you can practice that with little kids just by asking them to, giving them multi-step directions. You start out with one step, you build up into 2 steps, and then 3. And you just keep increasing the complexity of that as a child grows older, because that is extremely important in developing working memory. You can also work on that when you're reading with your child. After you read a book aloud, you can come back and ask for them to recall different things out of the book. Depending on their age, you'd be very simple at first. What were we reading about? And then as they get older, more complexity. Why do you think the author wrote that? And it really helps the child there. Developing self-control is another portion of executive functioning. That's something that we work on every day at Parkview. We're working with 3-year-olds all the way up to 8-year-olds. There's a vast difference between the behaviors of a 3-year-old and someone who's almost ready for the intermediate school. Working with them on being in control of their bodies, of their voice. And then organization and problem solving are the final 2 areas that we are working on. I'm including this in my staff meetings, and Dr. Robinson was kind enough to allow us to keep our paras for our staff meetings, back to what you were saying, Mrs. Clark. So we're excited to be able to include them in those trainings every month, and we push that to the beginning of our staff meetings so that they're always involved and are able to get that information and be able to support that in the classroom. Other than that, I just wanted to share that we have a big event coming up on October 22nd, our fall title event that is between Parkview and Cameron Intermediate. This year it's called the Hallway Hunt. It's a fall theme, and we are going to be hunting for phonics skills throughout the building. So it's a big scavenger hunt for kids. So, all the way from the littles who are looking for different letters, all the way up to fifth graders who are looking for multisyllabic words, digraphs, trigraphs, all the fun things that most of us probably didn't learn because we didn't have phonics, but they know it. We're going to teach the parents and grandparents. So, did you have any questions about anything in my report?
Dr. Ormsby, not so much a question, but just a comment to which I know it speaks to what you just talked about. So often, we hear that just teach them academics, just teach them what they need to know. And what I hear you saying, and I know is true, is that we not only have to teach that material, but we are finding that we have to prepare them to learn in ways that are, that's not the world we grew up in, so many of us. And so I think just that recognition and understanding that we're not just giving them information, we're teaching them how to learn and be good learners. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Ms. Rucker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I do want to, ironically, we're all talking about Missouri Assessment Program tonight. I just wanted to praise my teachers. I tell you what, this education gig is tough, as you kind of heard tonight. And our one accountability system within the state is difficult to maneuver. And we get hit hard with that at third grade when they come from no state assessment to probably the most difficult assessment, I would say, that I've seen. Actually, I used to put out questions to parents and they couldn't always answer the questions, and there's times I have to look a few times depending on how it's asked. So just an example of the plethora of information my teachers look at. There are 6 different types of questions that can be asked, anything from multiple choice, but that multiple choice question might be asked in a strategic thinking, which is a very high order thinking type of question. So they're intentionally putting answers on there that may all potentially be correct. And the child has to try to figure out which one Desi wants them to pick. But within those 6, just one of those is technology enhanced, and there's 9 different options. So not only are we trying to teach them the content, we're trying to teach them how to manipulate the technology part that goes with that in 9 different ways on every different standard. So the amount of information that we have is significant, but it's also significant to try to figure out where to go and why we're going to go there. So my teachers met, they've already had their own individual class scores for a couple months, as well as their grade level, and we met as vertical teams. So all of the ELA teachers sat together and all of the math science teachers sat together, and we went through and looked at the last 2 years' data, looking at item type, looking at technology enhanced items, looking at how we scored on what, to try to figure out where to go with instruction next. We're changing the way we're doing formative assessments and trying to make it identical to what we know with MAP, but what we also know is next year it could look completely different because we never get a blueprint of actually what they're going to ask and how they're going to ask it. So we're always kind of maneuvering through this really difficult game of what do they want us to get, when bottom line is we just want to teach kids, right? We don't want to teach tests, but we have one accountability system, so we've got to do the best we can to try to figure that piece out. So the teachers met, all of them, one night last week in our conference room and really just dug deep, and they looked at what are we strong in across the building. Okay, so we met vertically, so 3rd, 4th, and 5th. What standards are we doing well in? What content, what item type, what does that look like? They looked at what as a building strengths, as a building maybe where we need to ask questions differently. We looked at the level of rigor and what does that look like, and are we teaching that way and assessing that way? It just goes on and on. So there's a ton to it, but what I want you to know is the teachers within your district are hardworking, want to do everything correct. And I don't know how many of my teachers didn't sleep last week after I gave them that information because they were trying to figure out what they could even come back and do the next day. So there's a lot of tired eyes right now at CIS. Dedication your teachers have is phenomenal. And I just want to praise them for that. It's a lot of work, and they're in for it. So I'm very proud of them for the work that they're doing, and you could see by what Dr. Utek showed that it's paying off. So I love the group that I get to lead. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, and something that I haven't talked about before, is community partnerships. We started community partnerships at the intermediate school. We've got 15 businesses that are Chamber of Commerce businesses that are going to come 4 times this year. The goal basically, long story short, is to build a connection between our kids and the businesses in town. And what academic skills do the students need to be able to have a job when they leave CHS someday? So they came last week. That was the first of 4 visits, and last week was just basically kind of building connections and getting to know each other. And I'm just very grateful for those businesses to step out, spend time in their day away from their business to give back to our students. Our students were really excited to have somebody else there, and just those connections with our kids and their community is phenomenal. So those are the couple things I just wanted to highlight.
I happen to represent our business at the intermediate school and got to spend 30 minutes with a phenomenal 4th grade class. And I was asking questions, and they were engaged. They were extremely polite. Kudos to Mrs. Lee and her crew, and I truly look forward to coming back and sharing experience with those kids. And yeah, they're on it. So it was fun. Thank you for inviting us in.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Thank you.
Mr. Stickle.
All right. I'm usually a man of few words on this night, but I got a lot of stuff I want to get out here. A lot of shout outs this time around. So I do want to give a shout out to Miss Lim. Obviously, data collection and data breakdown and finding different ways to look at it is huge, and she's been a huge part of that in our building this year. And on top of that, she's also going to letters training and project lead the way training, so she is stacked, and she always finds time for me. So I appreciate that out of her, and she just needs to be recognized for that. Along those same lines, somebody else I need to recognize is Dr. Utek. She's spearheaded and really modeled, rolled up her sleeves, got in with our teachers in 6th grade and started working on RSPs in our building. That's been a huge help. That's something that I think probably most middle school principals that don't have an elementary background really struggle with, and I know I do, so that's been a huge help for me. It's been a huge load off my back and allowed me to dig deeper into some other data and some other pieces. And so that's been big this year as well. I do want to say we're starting to see a shift in our building, like with our kids. I think the first year we started seeing a shift right away with the adults in our building, or 3 years ago, and now we're starting to see it with our kids, which is exciting. It starts with our morning announcement team right now. So our morning announcement team right now is Charlie Youngs, Kendall Berry, and Reese Murphy, and they're about ready to come off of their rotation, and some new kids will come in. But they start our day off on a positive note. It's upbeat, it's fun. They kind of have their own routine, their own sign on and sign off, and it's been fun to see. It's been great, and it starts the day off on a positive note. I also, a huge shout out to Miss Atkinson, who took on Stuco for me. That was something I wanted to start as soon as I got here. And we have an open student council, so anybody can be a part of student council. We have an executive board, but any kid can be a part. So we have 30 kids involved in student council in our building. We have like 10 kids on our executive board. They're closer to 15, and they had the best pep assembly last Friday that I've seen in 28 years in a middle school setting. It was phenomenal. The energy was awesome. It was out of this world. There was no waiting around. There was no dead space. They just constantly rolled through things and kept the energy up and kept the energy high. And that's where you're starting to see a shift in our kids. nobody's too cool to stand up and sing their fight song anymore. We're starting to, it's just fun. It's fun to see, and it makes it fun to come to work every day and see that happen. And I'm just really excited about that. Our RTI that we started when we went to first period RTI across the board this year has been new, and it's been challenging and different. But talking to our teachers, I just gave a survey this week, and we're talking to teachers about that. That's probably one of our bright spots for sure, is that the kids have received that really well, and they're working hard in the mornings. Before our RTI, our response intervention, was in the afternoon, and it was at different times. And I just don't, at the end of the day, the last thing a kid wants to do is do something they're not good at. So, we start our morning that way when they're fresh, and it seems to be making a difference. Our teachers have bought into ExactPath. We've got some teachers that are really leading that. Miss Notch in 6th grade, our 7th grade ELA, Miss Zubek and Miss Willis, they've really kind of taken off with that this year. Just really pleased with our people and how hard they're working, and everybody is. They've all made sacrifices in our building this year, and just our expo teachers they've got a study hall in the morning, or they're asked to fill in so I can have other teachers working with other kids one-on-one. So it's been big this year, and I'm never shy of how professional and how hardworking our middle school staff is. Of all the buildings I've worked in, they've worked harder for me than any other group I've ever had, and I've worked in really good buildings, I think. So I'm just really proud of that. Also, one more shout out to Miss Ormsby and Miss Rucker. The phenomenal amount of work that they do on RSPs at the grade school level and at the intermediate level is unreal. We don't have very many kids on RSPs compared to where they were at, and they do a fantastic job. And so I'm in awe by them. Just can't say enough about those two ladies. So that's all I got. You guys got any questions for me?
I don't have a question, but I think the shift that you talk about, a big one that I've noticed this year is that the RTI has shifted to win.
Yeah, we call it win time now. I still have to catch myself. It's called what I need time, and it's just so it's not just it's what you need. It shouldn't be a punishment. I think lots of times kids, when they're in an intervention, they're working on stuff they're not good at. They think, well, I suck, so this stinks. And we don't want them to have that kind of philosophy. This is time to grow.
Right.
That's what learning is. It's about growth. It's about getting better. And I don't want our kids to think that they have weaknesses. That's negative thought. We have lesser strengths, and we want to make those our strengths. So it's just like I used to hate running up hills when I would go run. Well, now hills are my superpower. That's what I say to myself, so I get through it. And that's just flips your mindset. And that's what we want to do with our kids, and we want to flip that mindset. And I think it's working. We still have a ways to go, but we're getting there. So.
But it's just a little shift. It just was a little change of language,
Yep.
and I can see it growing.
Yep. Makes a difference. Subtle.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thanks.
School, lots of decorations. Obviously, you get a good win on Friday night. Everyone's really happy about that. Good showing at the dance. So definitely want to give a big shout out to Brittany Simpson and Sherry Green for all the hard work they do with the student council, to Addie McVicker being the president of our student council, and everyone that works with her. Just the different things that they did with social media to just get everybody involved. It wasn't just like a senior thing or a young class thing. It was an everybody thing. We were able to have our pep assembly Friday in the new gym, where everything's brand new, looks fancy. Got all of our student body on one side. I think we're going to stick with that. That was pretty cool to get everybody over there. A lot more energy than being spread out. We're not big enough to be on both sides, but then that freed up a lot of space on the other side for the adults to come in, all the parents and community members that wanted to be there. A couple things to highlight on what we've been working on this year. There was a lot of interest from the community on how do we improve grades and scores and stuff like that. Over the summer, we planned out and implemented at the beginning of the year a system for tracking student grades, that they can go on probation, and that gives them that heads up, like, hey, you have 2 weeks to get off of probation, and then so on and so forth. And what I'm happy to say is at this point, last year we had probably about 40 something kids that had an F, 1F or more. This year we're at like 21. So currently right now. So we'll do our next grade check here at the end of the week, or I guess the beginning of next week after the quarter ends this Friday. So we're making big pushes for definitely staying on top of academics. And what we found just in teacher discussion and then looking at just assignment, a lot of missing assignments. So, which leads into my next point of attendance wise. I think I showed that we were right about 80%. You throw in everything that happened about 3 weeks ago and the craziness from that, and you know, the fear that it caused that kept people home. I mean, 3 weeks ago we dropped down to about 72. So to say we're at 86 or at 80%, and my numbers project when I ran it this morning that we have about 20 more kids as of this Thursday. It will then be above 90, and that'll put us about 85. So, you know, we're doing good things with that. To couple that in conversations with our DESE rep, we can use tutoring hours as a way to help recover attendance, and I feel like this is very important that the community needs to know, especially if you have high school students. We have a policy, or a submission policy, that students have to have 90% attendance to be able to participate in sports. Doctor's notes and other excused absences allows the school to excuse them in terms of eligibility. So if you have a doctor's note that excuses 3 days for a surgery or something like that, and those absences still are there, but I can excuse those and you can be eligible. But with those tutoring hours, if you will go to tutoring, I can remove those absences from there, which will then boost your attendance rate. So there's a significant difference that we haven't really ever talked about before, but as I send out communications, I sent out over 43 communications today that we have 43 students that with 1 day of recovery, they would be above 90, and that would put us over 91% attendance as a building. So, I mean, that's where we're at, and that's how much we're talking about it and staying on top of it this year. Other than that, I mean, we're just plugging away, getting ready, like I said, to wrap up the first quarter, and teachers are working hard. So it was nice to have a little bit of a breath from last week. So I look forward to having a good short week and making sure that we end the quarter strong.
When do those tutoring hours take place?
We have tutoring Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you want to go to a 1 hour tutoring, you can sign up for a specific content on those days. And I remember which one is which. I'm pretty sure Wednesday is ELA. I know that one. The other 3 are spread out of the other 3 days. We also have, those are after school, so from 3 to 4. Also on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we have Wednesday night school and Saturday school. Wednesday night school is from 3 to 6. Students can come in and they can work on getting caught up on work and getting that seat time back. On Saturdays, it's from 8 to 11 in the morning. Not this Saturday, because I'm not doing that. With all the festivities that are coming in with March Fest, I will be busy with that. So, but on Saturdays, they can come in from 8 to 11. Again, 3 hours of seat time and getting work completed. So we're using that to its full capacity this year. I've got 4 teachers that have volunteered to, I guess not volunteered, they get paid to do it, but they're willing to come in and provide that time for students to be able to come in and work, that have dedicated just work time.
Great.
So.
Do many students use the opportunities?
Yes, they do. I want to say to this point, between Wednesday and Saturday school, I've had over 34 days of attendance recovered from that. And tomorrow I have 12 kids that are signed up to attend Wednesday night school from 3 to 6. And before there was a purpose, I hate to say it that way, before it had the benefit of the recovered seat time, we would have about 1 or 2. So, no, it's been a huge benefit. I mean, I think that plays a huge part in getting that information to the students, getting that information to the families, as well as I have in our new system, in the new Teacher E-system, I can print off just a sheet with the student's name and the missing work they have, and I can collect it and have it waiting for them when they get there. I provide that service for them. So that's always a good thing to have, and I've had great response from parents just in like, what do they need to do? Absolutely, they can be there. I will get them there. You can keep them longer if you want. So, but
So
Dr. Lane, if students elect to do the tutoring or they need to do the tutoring, are they then excused from whatever after-school activities they, I mean, does that work well? If they have to miss part of a rehearsal or practice or whatever?
I do try to, because it is a recovery situation right now, and there are, the students I'm talking about, those 34, or not 34, but the 43 that are within a day, I try to use that as more of a partnership with them, the families. I'm trying to treat them as young adults. I'm trying to give them some responsibility, some accountability on their own, that if they have an event. So like if I have someone that has a rehearsal that night, Wednesday doesn't work this week, then let's look at a Saturday. If the Saturday does not work, we can look at the next Wednesday. But really what I'm trying to do, other than just recover days, because we're early enough that we're pretty safe, is to have the constant conversation about, if it's in the front of your mind, you're always thinking about it. So it's not about recovering the 1 day of attendance, it's about making sure we don't add on 4 more in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
So it's not that I can work around schedules. And I have that communication with parents, because some people don't have the cars to get them there, some people need the different transportations. We can make it work. So
if I'm late to tennis practice because I went to tutoring, that's...
I talked to the coach.
Okay.
I just had a conversation with a parent and a coach today and said, hey, this is where we're at. The parent really wants them to have this. Would it be okay if they missed to do this? And they say yes. They said yes, not they say yes. I don't make them say anything. But if it didn't work today, then we would just set something else up. Because along with again, 3-hour tutoring sometimes can be very hard, very tough. Especially if you are a single parent with multiple kids, you got to be around. Maybe I can do 3 1-hour tutorings that get you home at 4 about the time mom will get home, or dad will get home anyway, and then we can work on that recovery. So there's a lot of flexibility in what we do. I think if we take everything into account and appreciate what the current situation everyone is in, we can make this thing happen. Because again, Dr. Lanigan, any one of us, I can't make this happen. It has to be a partnership. I have to be able to work with you. You have to know that I care about you as a person, and that I want you to see you be successful. And if I get some attendance out of it, fantastic. So.
I was excited to see the On My Own information activity that's coming up for our seniors in November. It kind of, that's what we're always trying to do, even starting at CIS with Ms. Rutgers' program. We're always trying to get these kiddos to look forward and to prepare. What's it going to be like someday when you're on your own? So I like that they're doing some simulations. They get some money, and then they get expenses and bills, and then they get to see if they can be successful, and they may decide maybe I want to change my career path. But, so I was kind of excited. It's a fun way for kids to start, just another way for us to put out there that someday you're going to be productive members of society. You can get this done. So I was excited to see that. So. Anything else? Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions about the high school activities, the maintenance reports? Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move back to Dr. Hutek.
It's getting a little time late, so I'm just going to preface this with everything in my board report. I believe you've seen, and we talked about the bulk of it was the MAP and EOC testing. I'm just going to throw it out there for any questions you might have for me regarding my board report.
A lot of great data. Yeah.
And the biggest thing I want to highlight is that our professional development learning this year has been phenomenal. That's some of the pictures that I shared. We're teaching students how the process of learning and not just the content is kind of what you were describing. So we're teaching students how to learn instead of what to learn all the time. We are helping them become situationally in the moment in their own learning. So that's so exciting. So I'll share more about that later. We have one more session.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think that covers all of our administrative reports. We are going to move on to our communication with patrons. We've reached the point in our meeting where residents of the district have requested to address the board about the governance and operation of the district. by being placed on the agenda with our policy and our Missouri State statute. This evening, we've had several individuals who have requested to add topics to the agenda. We do ask that we note that we request new presentations to be considered in accordance with policy, and that the previous month's subjects about books and things like that will not be revisited in this agenda this month. So as you approach the podium, we ask that you state your name for the record and confirm that you're a resident of the district. We ask that you stay on topic because we've noticed that topic in compliance with the Missouri Sunshine Law. We will be keeping time for 5 minutes as we do, and please remember that specific remarks about specific students or specific personnel concerns should be addressed in closed session. To the audience, we ask that you remain quiet so the board and others can hear the statements being made. We take this time seriously and want you to be heard. Note that it's the practice of the board to listen to our constituents to better understand your concerns. We will not be commenting on your remarks unless we need additional information or to clarify statements or remarks. This is our time to listen to you. So we will begin.
Heath Gilbert. I am here to discuss your new Ed Council policies with you. Before the board voted to sign the contract with Ed Council, Mrs. Ice, I asked you if you had looked at any of the sample policies to see what it is that the district would get if you signed that contract. And you told me, no, we have not. We are only taking a vote tonight to see if we will sign the contract. Now that we have had the policies, and I am starting the process of relearning the new ones, there's many things that concern me. First off, your policies are not searchable. The old policies under the Missouri School Board Association, if you wanted to know about drug testing, you could go into the top of it, you could put in drug testing, and every policy that discussed drug testing would pop up. And they would all be in order, and you could go through and you could select them. Once you found a policy that you were interested in, if I had a parent that asked me about the drug testing policy, I could send them a direct link to that policy. You can no longer do that. Under your Ed Council policies, they're not searchable, and I cannot share a link for a specific policy. You have to go through every page until you can find the relevant portion. It's cumbersome. It doesn't work or flow smoothly. Under the old MSBA policies, at the bottom of every page, there was, if there was a state law or a federal law that drove the requirement for that policy, it was listed. So as a parent, I could go down and see that there's a state law that is tied to this statute or this policy. And I could read that state law so that I could be informed. If there was a federal law that went with it, I could do the same thing. That is no longer an option. So you have the ability to reach out to Ed Council and ask them questions about the policies. As a parent, I no longer have that ability. I have nobody that can answer to me whether or not a policy is something that is created in-house and you can work to fix it, or if it is tied to a law and you cannot change the language. One of the policies that you amended in that long meeting, you changed the policy on the inspection of curriculum material. And if I remember correctly, you changed the language from any person can inspect it to parents can inspect it. That is both state and federal law. And if that policy still stands as saying only parents can inspect the curriculum material, you're not in compliance with the state or the federal law. And if you still had the MSBA policies, you would have been able to see at the bottom of it that it's tied to a state law. And you could look at it without having to reach out to Ed Council and see that it is tied directly to law. It's all gone. Within the policies, every instance which gave me as a parent the opportunity to reach out to the board and ask the board for a final decision if I don't agree with the district is gone. I no longer have any avenue as a parent to request the board vote on something that the superintendent has decided on. Every instance has been removed from those policies. There is not a single policy that I have been able to find, and I've looked for them, where I can ask the board to intervene at a board meeting and take a vote and potentially overrule the decision of Mr. Robinson. The policies that you have adopted from the Ed Council were written by your attorneys, not for the benefit of the parent or the student, but the benefit of the district. Those policies were written by your attorneys to protect you. All of that language that you stripped out, that you celebrated, is now gone, was the protection for the parents and the students. It's all gone. You have, by adopting those policies, you have created a king. This man gets to decide and is the final decision in everything that goes on in this district. I cannot ask you to vote on anything anymore. Your policies only protect you. The old policies protected everyone, to include the students and the parents.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Next on the agenda is Mrs. Allen. Ms. Allen, if you'll just introduce yourself for the record and confirm that you're a resident of the district, please.
Paula Allen, and yes, I am a patron and resident of the district. The Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, also the PPRA, is a federal law that gives parents the right to review the curriculum used to teach their child at school. The PPRA also gives parents the right to opt out of certain surveys and studies that ask about sensitive topics. The PPRA applies to programs and activities funded by the United States Department of Education, including those of state and local education agencies. I believe there is a violation of law both on state, which I referenced last month, and federal levels since at least March 10th of 2023. There are legal firms such as the Goldwater Institute and Alliance Defending Freedom, better known as the ADF, that appear to be taking these cases. We would really hate to have to go that route and cost the district unnecessary money. However, it has been over a year and a half at this point. I was initially ignored. Then I was told that a small fraction of my Sunshine Law request would be provided, and now I'm told my request can be fulfilled once I paid over $1,500. The Missouri Sunshine Law, also known as Chapter 610 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, is a law that ensures the public has access to government information. The law aims to make government more transparent and fair by requiring public bodies to be open to the public unless otherwise stated by law. The law applies to all public and quasi-public governmental bodies in Missouri. Public records, or all records, whether written or electronic, are subject to the Sunshine Law, unless a Sunshine Law specifically states otherwise. Under fees, public bodies can charge a fee for copying and research costs, but there are limits to how much they can charge. So, it is an option of the district if they charge for such requests and how much. The amount being charged is exorbitant, especially when the information provided at times is digital, and that is weaponizing the Sunshine Law to retaliate and intimidate individuals to deter us from obtaining the information requested. You have a board member that publicly accused other patrons that were running for school board while she was as well, that they were weaponizing the Sunshine Law. At times, accusations are made that we are weaponizing the Sunshine Law, always being advised that a question we have should have been a Sunshine Law request. Reality is, a Sunshine Law request is what is required to get the Cameron R1 School District and the school board to provide information that should be readily accessible. The members of the board, as well as parents in the district, are not aware of what is in the instructional material. When we attempt to do the work to learn what is there, we are charged for doing so. Why so much? Additionally, after researching, I am aware that the number of classrooms that actually have the information to fulfill my Sunshine Law request is much less than what I have been advised and quoted the cost on said request. Cameron Intermediate School, Cameron Veterans Middle School, and Cameron High School consist of ELA teachers in each building, along with a handful of special education teachers and history teachers. So, for example, there are not 37 classroom libraries at Cameron High School, which would cost $406.82. I have been advised that there aren't even that many classrooms in the building, and I've done my research.
Ms. Allen, when you requested the materials, did you specify ELA or history classrooms, or did you just say any?
All classroom libraries, and I was
Okay.
told, I mean, a ridiculous amount in each building.
Okay.
But I'm waiting for a more pertinent question that I'm usually asked. Who did I talk to? Who did I get this information from?
Did you give one of these to our board secretary so she can
I
have
did
one
not,
for
but
them?
I'll be happy to give her a copy. This is my copy and I have notes on it. So you guys usually ask me where I get this information from about there being fewer classroom libraries. It was confirmed by your staff and your students in this district. So information is being falsified to charge me an exorbitant rate to deter me from following through.
Again,
That's
Ms. Allen,
shameful.
I just want to ask you, did you specify only ELA or history classroom?
I requested to be able to review all classroom libraries
Okay.
in each building.
Okay. So in your talking to us, you mentioned specifically ELA.
Because those are the classrooms that actually have classrooms libraries, not all 37
So. I
in
mean,
the
if-
high school.
I would ask that you amend your sunshine law request then to narrow the scope of that request, because when we, for example, if we have a child that is not able to participate in maybe health class or physical education class, they may have a book that they go read during that time. So that is a classroom setting. So if you would like to narrow the scope of your sunshine request, go ahead and resubmit that.
Maybe there's some confusion here. So when I submitted the request, I wanted to review all the books in every single classroom library in this district. You guys provided me the information with how many classroom libraries there are per building. I have since confirmed with staff as well as students that those numbers are not correct. There are not that many classroom libraries in CIS, CBMS, or CHS. So if there are not truly that many classroom libraries in each of those buildings, the number that you have given me is very inflated if the libraries don't, that many libraries don't consist.
I don't know who you got your information from, but I think and I don't know, I can request, I watched that from the sidelines. I know we asked specifically the number of classrooms. We don't know which teacher has extra books on the side of their table to hand out during downtime. An algebra teacher might have 4 books. I mean, so if you could just narrow the scope of that request, we can try to, if you give us the specific classrooms that you want to look at,
I
then we
want
can
to see
narrow.
all the classroom libraries. Why
Okay,
would,
then I think
why
that
would,
is
why would
probably
the
how we
information?
responded then.
But when you have staff that's telling me that there are not 37 teachers that have books in their classrooms, that doesn't line up with the numbers you're giving me. So somebody's not being honest here.
I don't know who you're getting your information from. We specifically asked the administrative team for that data.
I'm getting information from staff that works in those buildings.
Okay, I'm unaware
So
of that, so.
I
If you want to
just-
send that staff member to Dr. Robinson, they can speak with Dr. Robinson about how they're interpreting that information, because we obviously did interpret it different than what you were thinking. So if you want to clarify that, we're happy to provide whatever. That's how we understood the sunshine request, that you wanted all classroom libraries.
I do, and I'm being told that the number of classroom libraries that you're saying exist don't exist. That's what I'm being told. So, And
If you can have that staff-
$1,500 is pretty exorbitant.
Sure, if you can have that staff member follow up with Dr. Robinson, and then we can help clarify
Well,
that
they're
for you.
probably not gonna do that.
Well, then, I think that.
Well, I mean, they're probably not gonna do that because they don't wanna be reprimanded. They don't wanna be retaliated against.
I don't believe anybody, I think we've done the best that we could to respond the way you wrote the request. If you want to narrow the scope of that request, or if you can come up with better language, I have no idea we assume every teacher has books in their classroom. So that's how we came up with the scope of that request.
Yeah.
So you didn't verify that the books exist, you're just quoting a price?
I think it would be fair here to insert that had we given you, let's say our ELA teachers have a larger library. Let's say we have an algebra teacher who has a few books. Had we not included that classroom, it would have come across to you that we're trying to hide something, and we would have been accused of not being transparent. So I think the effort was to give you every classroom. That was the request, and so that's
Every
the numbers you were
classroom that
given.
has a classroom library. I don't need to know how many classrooms are in each building.
We assume every classroom has books in it, so.
So you didn't do your own due diligence to clarify to make sure that 37 classrooms in a high school actually have libraries before you quoted me this amount, before I decided if I wanted to proceed with it? I mean, that's just ridiculous. I can't even believe that.
So what we did is we asked for the number of classrooms, and we approximated, just to be transparent, this is out there, we approximated 30 minutes per classroom to go pull books. I know we have some teachers that probably have over 1,000 books. That's going to take a lot more than 30. We probably have some teachers that maybe only have 4 or 5 books, depending on. And I think we also very clearly put at the bottom of the response that we would adjust the amount depending on when we started to go research and pull product to respond to that request, that we can adjust the rate of that. That was very clearly stated at the
Well,
bottom.
I think to be
your
fair
response.
to the patron requesting the information, I think you should actually explore how many classroom libraries exist per building so you can get a more accurate number than over $1,500.
So what is the definition of classroom library to you? That's, I guess, what I.
If a teacher has a personal classroom library in their class. And I'm being told by staff that predominantly at CIS, CVMS, and CHS, math teachers don't have library books in there. I'm being told that it's the ELA teachers that have the majority of them. Some social studies teachers have some, and some special ed teachers have some. Now, I could list specific teachers that I was told that, because I asked a lot of different questions, and I gave the link to the individual that I was asking. I said, I want you to go through this whole list, because I want to have factual information, not opinion. And so there were some specific things I asked, and they were like, no, so-and-so is a teacher for that, and no, they don't have books in their classroom. And I'm like, okay. So it just doesn't make it look like you're and yet we are not willing to work with somebody that's trying to learn what instructional material is available to the students if you're not providing a very accurate cost based on, well, we know there's X amount of classrooms in this building and X amount in this building, but of those 37, we don't know that maybe really only 7 of those classrooms have libraries, or 10 or 12 versus 37.
Sure,
so that's a huge.
I want to reiterate that probably, I mean, there's a lot of classrooms that probably have books, and we were understanding that you wanted access to every book in a classroom.
Absolutely, but I don't want probably there's 37 libraries. So
then
surely
I'm going to stand on that. Each classroom probably has a book that I'm going to stand on that. I would even say that even the music classrooms have books in them. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to stand on the fact that every classroom has a book, and that's how we figured
Okay.
it. If you would like to narrow
I
the
guess your
scope,
staff isn't being honest with me.
or if you would like to send that.
That's unfortunate.
I'm not familiar if that staff member is aware of all of those.
They work in the building. I mean, they're in the, they're not just specifically in their classroom, so that's
Well,
unfortunate.
thank you for the information. We stand by the sunshine request.
Of
And
course you
you're
do.
always welcome to amend the sunshine request, and we can try to get the information.
Or you could work with me. I've offered to volunteer. Other people have offered to volunteer. Teachers shouldn't have to mess with this at all in terms of taking their time. They should be able to focus on teaching the students. But the sad thing is there's not much unity or trying to work together within this community when it comes to this school district. And that's very sad and very unfortunate.
Well, thank you for your comments, and like I said, if you can provide me more information, we can try to get that amended for you. Moving on, we're going to move on to Mr. Landy. Mr. Landy, if you would introduce yourself for the record, confirm that you're a resident of the district.
Yep, name's Dan Landy. I am a resident of this district. I'd like to start tonight with prayer, please. The Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. Tonight I want to talk about policy C115P. That is titled Community Engagement and Communication. It's a two-part policy. The first part on the of the policy is about communication. It doesn't define communication. To me, communication is, well, adequate or productive communication is a two-way street. Okay, that's not what we have in our school board meetings. Okay, and you said it a while ago, Ms. Ice, that your job is to sit there and listen, and our job is, is to explain whatever beef we have with the school district. That is not communication. That is a one-way street, and it's counterproductive to solving any problems. The superintendent, according to policy, is in charge of creating a communications plan. He and I spoke the other day about this. It's in the works. Okay, I wanted to go look at it online, but I can't because it's not there. Why is it not there? I don't know. Somebody dropped the ball, I suppose. But again, my question is, and again, all my questions tonight, folks, are rhetorical because you won't answer. Okay, I understand that, but I'm going to ask them anyway. Why don't you show more concern for the parents? I don't understand that at all. The second part of, well, let me back up just a minute. In the communications part of this policy, there's 5 different points that it makes, different types of communication. To the public, to the stakeholders, during emergencies. Anyway, there's 5 different ones listed, but none of them actually talk about engaging the public. It's basically, it's all top down, right? Communication, according to this policy, starts at the top and is sent down the chain to John Q. Citizen, right, to the parents. But where does it say in this policy? Actually, it doesn't. And a rhetorical question. Where does it say that there's an up channel, right? A two-way street. It doesn't, and that's the problem. The second half of this, obviously, is community engagement. And we've harped on this before. When was your last community engagement meeting? Rhetorical question, I'll tell you. June of 23. Over a year ago. Now, why does it take, why so long? Okay, rhetorical question. Community engagement, for those that don't know, the difference between a community engagement meeting and a school board meeting is in a community engagement meeting, we are allowed to ask questions and you are supposed to give us some sort of an answer. Okay, that's two-way communication. That is productive communication. That's how problems get solved. But we haven't had that in over a year, June of 23. Why? Okay, that shows a blatant disregard for the parents. Stakeholders were called. Folks, I'm telling you, you wonder why there's problems in the district, and you wonder why. This is why, because you don't really hear us, you don't want to hear us, you don't really care. At least that's what your actions show. Your actions show that you don't really care, or else we'd be having more community engagement meetings. If this were a community engagement meeting, I would be able to ask questions, and I would actually expect an answer. Okay, answer like for instance, I'll give you a for instance. Okay, why did you remove your nameplates from your desks? Okay, why? I mean, simple question, right? Another simple question would be, I would probably ask, well, okay, why won't you put your pictures next to your names on the webpage? Why don't you want people to see your faces? See, folks, again, there's a serious lack of accountability in this school district. I would ask another question. Why are so many dirty books in your school? I mean, really, I mean, those are questions that I would like answers to, and I won't get them in this forum, in this, at this meeting. So I would just ask the board to please, let's have some community engagement meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landy. I do want to let the public know that we did have a photographer here this evening, and we were taking a group board picture right before the meeting. So our board picture, we will have a group board picture. I don't know why the nameplate's just, it's a busy evening, so they're up there. We'll try to make sure that we have them up there again in the future. That was just an oversight on my part, that we didn't get our nameplates up there. So thank you for that public comment period. Now we're going to move on to the comment period for items under consideration. This is the time, kind of the same format, except you have 3 minutes during this time. If you'd like to speak for any items under consideration, our policy requires us to ask the community to sign up in advance so that we're aware who would like to speak on a topic. This evening we had 2 individuals who have requested to speak about our one item. The approval of the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the Series 2024 General Obligation Refunding Bonds. So first is Mr. Landy. If you'll once again introduce yourself for the record and confirm that you're a resident of the district.
Sure. Dan Landy, I am a resident of the district. Again, I'm here to talk about this approved resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of Series 2024 General Obligation Refunding Bonds. Okay, that's a lot. But what does it mean? I don't know. And that's why I'm here. I don't know. I don't know what that means. And I'll tell you why. Because you haven't posted that on the internet. You haven't provided that to the public. Okay, and this leads right back to this community engagement stuff, folks. I don't know what that is. Shouldn't I? I mean, as a parent, as a stakeholder, shouldn't we all? That's the problem. I don't know anything about it. But if we're going to talk about it, if you're going to talk about it at a school board meeting, we should know. And that's all I've got to say about that. Okay, beating a dead horse and all that. But please, I need to calm down. Hang on, take a breath. We need your help. We all know that we've been playing tug of war with these dirty books. Okay, but that's besides the point. There are other issues going on in this school district besides the pornographic books. Okay, there's bullying, there's drug use.
Mr. Landy, I'm going to ask that you stay focused on this is the time to talk about the items for consideration.
Oh, well, you're right. I'm sorry, yeah. Again, I don't know a thing about it, and it's your fault.
And the next individual would be Mr. Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert, if you would just state your name for the record and confirm that you're a resident of the district.
I believe this is either the 5th or the 6th time now that I've come to you asking you to consider changing how you hold the section of the meeting relating to items for consideration. That document, 30-some pages, was not made available until late this afternoon. You have a $9 million bond that you're going to take a vote on. I did not have the opportunity to read the document. I have not been able to hear your discussion about that bond and that contract. I cannot speak to the items that are on your agenda for items for consideration because you keep it from us. All you need to do is flip around the order. Have your discussion so that we can hear what it is you're considering doing and then give us the opportunity to speak. Open up those documents more than an hour and a half before a board meeting so that somebody can go through 31 pages of a contract. Contracts aren't fun or easy to read. There's stuff in there that I don't understand that I need to have time to look into if I'm going to stand here before you and speak like I'm intelligent. I cannot do that the way that you order these meetings. You should know by now, I read these documents. I read your policies. When I come in to address you for an item for consideration, I try to be informed. When you don't make the documents available, that is impossible for me to do. There might be something in there that is glaring, that if I had heard the conversation or had the ability to read it, that I might be able to point it out. The contract before, where the attorney stood up here and said, well, yeah, we won't do that. I didn't get to have the opportunity to say, board, he is telling you that he's not going to do something that is not in that contract. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. That would have been good information to have. You could have asked that attorney to put it into the contract and have that guarantee in writing. Those words that that attorney stood and gave to you about the policies, those assurances are not worth anything because they're not in the contract. And because of the way that you structured this portion of the meeting, because you don't turn that on to make the document available, you are keeping the public entirely in the dark. Somebody that wants to talk to about an item for consideration, they got to come in here and guess what you're going to do.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, can I give some good news with regards, Doug Billings, I'm national, right side with right side.
No, sir, I'm sorry.
We have national media coming to shine a light on Cameron schools.
Sorry.
I think it could be great, especially Dr. Robinson. I would love
Sir,
to
I'm gonna
interview
ask
you.
to sit down or I
Tucker
will
Carlson and
adjourn.
Megyn Kelly are going to be here, and we're also making an arrangement. I'm on
Sir,
Trump's, 90% of you may like this, 10% may hate it. But President Trump coming to town for a possible rally, and I would love to be able to interview you, Dr. Robinson. Would you come on the show? We have 3.5 million people who would love to hear from you. Love to hear from you all. It would shine a great light, and I, on the schools of Cameron, and I appreciate this man's service. Please talk to us. Talk to us about the books. I would love to speak to all of you. We have 3.5 million people. I'm going to bring Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly. We're going to talk to the Trump team. Please.
I've just adjourned the public portion of the meeting.
Are you going to reconvene? Or are you?
I'm gonna adjourn for a moment. I'm gonna go use the restroom, and then I'm gonna ask for a motion to go into closed session when I return.
So there will be no more public?
I may go back into open session after we go into closed session, because we will want to move on our item possibly, but I'm gonna go.
You have a lot of people that here want to finish the public portion. Why not go back into
Well, because I'm being
public?
back interrupted, so, sorry.
Can't you just go right back into it?
It's not what it's about doing for the public.
It doesn't mention going into closed on here. It didn't announce. I don't think it can do that.
It's not on the agenda? Another closed session is not on the agenda?
Well, not until, no, it's not. No.
Yeah, see that? How can you go into a closed session that's not on the agenda? No, you can't do it that way. A closed session has to be on the agenda.
They can recess and adjourn, but not.
It,
Is there gonna be an intention to go back into open session? I just need to know.
Are we gonna go back into open session?
Yes.
From what I understand, she's gonna come back, go into closed, and then open it back up.
So we all need to leave and then we'll come back
I
in?
don't know that.
You're going to go into a closed session that's not on the agenda?
We didn't finish the earlier one. We didn't get all the agenda items. We do this often. Not often, sometimes with Yeah.
Are we sure? I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
You know, or you know I don't know?
No, I just know.
No, it was.
I'm just,
I would imagine we'll go back into open as soon as she comes back in.
She said that she's not going to do that. Would you consider asking, please?
I will.
The public is here, the public would like to hear the meeting.
Understood.
You've got to be here, we don't, when the public section is done, we can go
You
home.
understand that what just happened was a little unusual.
There's nobody in here that had any part of that.
I understand that, but
And the
a little
individual that
grace-
did that is not in the building, I don't believe,
a
right?
little grace would be asked for in this moment.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are you going to go ask?
I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, no.
I want to see what the
So
pleasure.
how many classes at the high school truly have a
See if you like to
classroom
go into
library?
closed or into open session.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. I would make a motion that we,
No,
that we
who
remain,
was asked?
go back into open session.
I understand, but-
Go back into open session, and the second one is to go back into open
So
session.
they didn't ask how many classrooms have books in them, just how
Is
many
there,
classrooms you have in
any
the school.
discussion about going back into open session? All those in favor of going back into open session, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, thank you for the restroom break. Appreciate that. We'll be back into open session. So, next item, for items for under consideration, which is the approval of the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the Series 2024 General Obligation Refunding Bonds. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution that LJ Hart presented earlier to us this evening?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Peck, and a second by Ms. Lockridge. Is there any discussion? I appreciate the education piece that LJ Hart provided this evening to us.
Very thorough.
They are very thorough. They have been a great partner to work with the entire time I have been on the board. And they're always helping us move and do the next project and looking forward to helping with funding and projects and things like that.
So as a new member, how long is the relationship with LJ Hart been? It looked like in the paperwork that I've seen.
Yeah, it was actually before I was here that they were using LJ
I mean, it looks like this is a long-standing relationship that we have built.
Since probably early 2000s. Probably early 2000s, they've had that relationship. Yeah.
I mean, everything that they gave to us is well prepared. I think that stands out that they.
And they represent probably more school districts than any other
But
bonding
you said
company.
318 of the 5,
Yeah.
I mean,
There's a lot. And you gotta figure there's a lot of schools that don't have debt service, don't have other issues, so that's, you know, you can take out some of those just because they don't have, you know, they don't need that service. So,
No, I think that they were very well prepared with everything that they gave us.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion on the table. Any other in regards to the resolution? All those in favor of the motions presented, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. I look forward to getting this moving on to the next process there. We've come to the moment then in the meeting for board member comments. So we'll start with Mr.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for the art students and what they provided for central office and in the hallways, and just appreciate that they think of the staff here at central office and us, and appreciate that.
Just touch on homecoming. Seemed like a wild success just throughout the community. A lot of community involvement. The parade seemed rather large. A lot of great comments I heard for it. So just good job to everybody involved. Went well.
Right. I second on that. That homecoming events were wonderful. I had my husband was part of the '94 reunion, so we had something going on Friday and Saturday night, and I just had so many of his friends that just were very impressed with the buildings and the activities and just the parade, and so it made me very proud to be sitting here with you all and our administrators, and just I love the community partnership program that Ms. Rucker brought to CIS. I think that's an amazing program and can't wait to be a part of it going forward. And I'm not going to steal your thunder because I know you'll talk about it, but can't wait for this next weekend.
Yes, March Fest coming up Saturday. Please come out, and thank you to Gina and Mr. Jennings and Ms. Slagle, Ms. Eckert for all the hard work. I'm looking forward to the 6th annual March Fest. Be fun.
I thought homecoming was a fun and great opportunity to be a dragon. The instance that just happened in the boardroom, I do want you to know that policy dictates that we have residents speak about items that are noticed on the agenda. And I didn't want to get into a situation where we were violating Sunshine Law because his moments of conversation and comments were not noticed on the agenda. And I've been advised that we make sure that we follow that policy and that we make sure that we notice the agenda appropriately so that when people are talking about subjects that we can have all sides represented. So I felt like it was important that I control the meeting, and that was the best way I knew how at that moment because I had asked the gentleman to sit down and he had desired not to. So thank you for bearing with me as we work through that process. Appreciate all of the reports that we got. People are working hard and to try to educate our students, and I really appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the public portion of the meeting again. So, and do I have a motion by roll call to go into closed session? Yes. Under Missouri State Statute 610.021, subsection 3 and 13. So moved. Moved by Ms. Goodwin Clark. Second by roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Very good. With that, we're going into closed session. Thank you guys for attending this evening.
Who was the lady that got sideways with me when she walked? The woman that got sideways with me?
Yes.
When I was talking about, are you going to be a full session? She was sitting next to you.
Does it usually work that way? It has to be noticed on the agenda. So
you're saying that Missouri Sunshine Law says
But
that
why?
their content,
So, I'm sorry, what is wrong?
I'm just looking for citizens, that what your public participant is going to talk about has to be noticed.
Yes. Yes, so that states that our attorney.
Hey, Mr. Gilbert, are you planning to come meet with me tomorrow at 8:30?
In the morning, yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. I didn't get a response back, so I just wanted to make sure.
Sorry, I had
No,
a
that's
busy day.
okay. I understand.
Thank you for checking.
Has to be related, as our policy is written, has to be related